up, hobby friends? It's that time of month for another hobby check-in. This one was a pretty quiet month for me. I normally paint a lot more in terms of quantity, and in terms of the goals I'd set originally, I wanted to do Zarek and the Deathwatch Chaplain, which I accomplished. And then, if I had more time, I wanted to start on the gun haulers. I only finished the Deathwatch Chaplain. Actually, as of recording, this is a Monday, so I only finished it a couple of days ago. And I sort of want to take the rest of this month to finish editing some of the videos. I have 8 for Zarek, I have the 5 I recorded for the Deathwatch Chaplain, and then I want to prep some of the models for the month of April. And so I have time to do the gun haulers. I'm probably not going to start the gun haulers, so they're being pushed back to the month of April. In terms of what I actually painted this month, though, it was kind of nice to take a step back from army grinding and focus a little more on painting a lower quantity of models to a higher standard, or at least insofar as spending more than 2 or 3 days on a model. The Silent King was a lot of fun, a little daunting just in terms of how many pieces it was. It was probably one of the first models I really painted in true subassembly fashion. I'd done models before like Catacross and the Seraptic in a couple of individual pieces, so keeping off like a few armor plates here and there, but for the most part, those models were fully assembled and very easy to both visualize light and shadow. And then I wasn't trying to juggle 1,000 different pieces. I think Catacross ended up being like 6, and the Seraptic, if you don't count like the 6 individual vent plates on the torso, he was only like 4 or 5. The Silent King ended up being like 17 sub-assembly pieces, and it was quite a few to keep track of and a little daunting at first because when it was all splayed out and unassembled, it felt like there was a lot to do. But once I got the diets done, that was actually a fair number of the portion of pieces, and I was able to quickly push through and finish the rest of the model. He was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed painting him. I kind of wish I had figured out the redstone color way earlier. Like, on the one hand, it's nice that I have this one centerpiece model, he looks phenomenal, and this one color is probably really only going to feature on him, and so he stands out. On the other hand, the color looks phenomenal, and I kind of wish that I'd used it more in the rest of the army to create some visual interest. Yeah, not much to do. The model looks great, it looks fantastic in the cabinet, as you can see back there, and I'm really looking forward to playing some casual narrative games with him in some of my army lists. The other model I painted was the Deathwatch Chaplain, which also took a little longer than I expected. I was only looking to spend a couple of days on him, but he ended up taking about a week. And again, that was fine, not a big deal. I was mainly looking to answer a couple of questions, I guess, related to how I was going to approach the Deathwatch army. And there are parts of the Deathwatch Chaplain that I do like, and parts that I don't. So starting with the parts that I don't like, I think the model's too busy, both as the stock model and then how I actually ended up converting it. I covered him in a lot of purity seals, and I feel like he's a little too busy. There's too much going on the model, and that combined with my not putting enough contrast into the blending and then pushing my highlights maybe a little too strongly in some of the undersides, he doesn't pop quite as much as I'd like, and I'm a little wary how he'll look compared to the rest of the army. I think I'm going to maintain the same approach when I paint my Deathwatch. I'm going to continue painting the armor in very much the Darren Latham style with these strong heavy metal edge highlights, but I'm going to push in a little more contrast in the blends. I'm going to inject more of my own already established style, both just to speed up the process, create a little more contrast, push the black areas a little stronger, and then when I convert the models, probably cover them in less stuff. Hopefully that they'll pan out. I'll paint a couple more test models before I actually dive into the army and see how I feel. Worst case, the Chaplain may end up being a one-off, and then I'll have to convert up another one to replace him, which is also fine because, and I'll talk about this in the video I recorded of him, I ended up using brown stuff for the purity seals, and I sculpted them way too thin. And so he's actually a fragile model if you hold him in the wrong spots. He's okay if you grab him by the wheels or the base, but if you squeeze any of the purity seals too roughly, or you grab him the wrong way, they will actually snap. And I've already broken off a few of the purity seals. So I think even just for the sake of tabletop durability, I may end up replacing him anyways. We'll see. One of the biggest, I think, gains for me this month was picking up the Brio 4K, which you can sort of see in camera here. I've been using the Logitech C920 for the longest time, and I had a pair of them. So one for close-ups and one for broad shots. And then when I was recording in Streamlabs, I would be able to switch back and forth between them depending on whether I wanted a close-up shot of what I was painting or something more of an overview of my entire painting table. It works okay. My issue with the C920 is that because it's not a 4K, it only records at 1920, and because of its very, very narrow focal depth, I had to hold the model at a specific position, at a specific length or distance away from the camera. Um, a little too close or a little too far, it would be out of focus. Or if I shifted even a little bit, I would be out of frame. And it actually made recording very, very challenging. And I hated doing it with that webcam. One of the issues as well is that because they're both identical, Streamlabs has trouble recognizing the two of them simultaneously. And every time I start a new recording session, it would take me like 5-10 minutes to basically unplug, replug, and set up the two separate webcams again so that Streamlabs would recognize both C920s as independent video sources. So that was always a pain. It slowed down my process and it made recording very, very challenging. Earlier on in this month, I made the decision after a lot of research and humming and hawing to invest in a 4K webcam. I still want to get a DSLR, a mirrorless DSLR, to at some point in the future to invest in for higher quality recording as well as picture taking. But the problem is because I'm still not currently working and looking at the prices in terms of what I'd have to invest in, the DSLR would still end up being like $1,500 at minimum, and I don't really have the capital to drop on that equipment just yet. So the Brio being about 220, it was on sale, was a pretty bargain compromise, and I figured if I didn't like it, I tried it out, I could always just return it and then just save up for the DSLR. So I ended up picking it up, and halfway through painting Xerac, I switched over to the Brio, and it has been phenomenal. I now have a setup where I'm using the Brio to record all of my painting. It's got a wider or a deeper area of coverage and a broader focal range. And so I have a little more leeway in terms of how I hold the model, the space in which I can work in, where it will still record in focus at high quality, and I can then edit it in post-production to crop to where I need, and it makes my painting a lot more seamless. And then have my C920 set up as a face cam like you see here, or sometimes as a palette cam. It's on an adjustable arm, and that's not a problem adjusting. So I can now boot up Streamlabs faster too because they're two separate webcams. It recognizes them instantly. So whenever I start a new painting session, I just boot it up, hit record, and I'm free to go. So that's been really, really phenomenal. I did encounter a couple of technical challenges because I was learning to set it up and how to use it while I was recording and painting Xerac. I ended up having a couple of clips, and you'll see in the videos I'm releasing this month, where sometimes the color balance is a little off or the exposure is a little too high, and that was partially my fault. I was still figuring out how to get Brio properly set up, and I found that, of course, it's a little more sensitive in terms of all these fine-tuned settings compared to the 920. And then if I start painting during the day, because I have a window in front of me, over the course of a day, if I'm painting for 8, 9, 10 hours into the night, if I have the auto color balance and auto exposure turned off, over time they do shift, and I have to manually go back in and adjust them. So that's something that I had to learn to do. I couldn't just fire and forget and then paint for like 8 or 9 hours. Every couple of hours after, I would have to double check make sure that, okay, the colors are still matching, everything's still in focus. So that was a bit of a learning curve. And so the videos for Sarek, at least some of the earlier ones, I think the painting the blue energy and then painting the menhirs, the quality of the video is a little spotty, which I don't like, but the model was already painted by the time I figured it out. So moving forward, and I think the Deathwatch Chaplain will turn out much nicer. What this also means is I now actually want to record everything I paint. Um, I'm learning my workflow, my process in terms of how I record, and I'm enjoying it a lot more. And that combined with the fact that I now want to paint fewer models at higher quality means I can spend more time putting out better tutorial videos. So I'm actually looking forward to the next few months of just getting into the habit and the routine, recording everything I paint, figuring out how to properly record in one pass and bring it into Premiere so it's much easier to edit. That's also actually one of the other big things that I picked up this month was the Logitech C935 headset. So it's wireless. Before I picked up this headset, I was using a lapel mic from Bose to record, and it's not a carryoid pickup or recording pattern. It records in an omnidirectional pattern, which means it picks up everything around it. And so it was inobtrusive. It's not something on my head. I could just clip it to my shirt and paint away. But the problem is because it's wired and because it's omnidirectional, I found that the wire was constantly getting in my way. Um, my computer tower is on the other side of my desk. And so having that wire jump or run across the room with two cats who would love to play with wires and chew wires really wasn't a feasible option. Plus, it picked up all of the shirt sounds, the shuffling sounds. If I clap my hands or do anything in my painting area, it would pick up the sound. And so I hated recording with that. So basically, what was happening was with the two C920s recording over, I ended up having to use my phone to record any face shots. And because I didn't want to have to constantly jump back and forth with record this, and figure out where to cut and which videos to stitch together, my process ended up being having the two C920 webcams overhead recording my paint station, close and far. I had my phone on a tripod in selfie mode recording me. I had my lapel mic wired running to my cell phone on the right hand side. So the wire didn't have to go across the room. It wouldn't get in the way of my cats. They wouldn't want or wouldn't be as enticed to chew on the wire. And then in post production, I would then have to take both webcam sources. I would have to take the phone source, link it all together, make sure that the audio is synced. And then I could then group it all together and then cut one massive video into the sections that I needed. I found that that was very clunky and it slowed down the recording process. One, because I was constantly playing with different cameras, and then it made editing a real pain because it took so much longer to make sure everything was in sync, to line up all the different audio sources with the video sources, and because I couldn't on the fly record clips, name, save, and organize them, it made it much harder to stitch together multiple recording sessions. So something like doing a Sarek would have been a nightmare with, because it's 8 different videos and I painted over the course of like 15, 16 days. If you imagine I was doing 3 or 4 different sessions each day, it ended up being a lot of video. So with the new setup and the new wireless headset, I now have the 4K recording the entire painting station. I have the C920 that I can jump back and forth in Streamlabs as an overlay. And then I have my audio source from the headset. So now everything's recording in one video. It's a much more integrated workflow, and I can literally just boot up the computer, check all of the autofocus settings off, hit record, and then I'm good to go. It also means that on the fly, I can just finish a recording, boot up the save drive or the save folder, rename the file so it's organized, and then record another clip. So it's definitely sped up the process. I'm enjoying recording it a lot more, and I'm looking forward to doing a lot more videos and video tutorials in the future. I also tried a couple of Twitch recording sessions just to give it a shot. I wanted to see how Streamlabs would integrate with live streaming. I wanted to see how my computer would handle streaming 4K with the Brio, and it works well. It works fine. I can't say I'm a huge fan of the platform, not insofar as the people are building up the subscribers or the followers. I know that those take time, and it's an organic growing process. My issue becomes the recording or the painting process itself. So I'm not really a huge conversationalist. I don't really enjoy starting conversations, and I know that that's the thing I work on. I try a lot, but I work better if I'm going to be talking. I need someone there to bounce the conversation off of, someone who gets me talking and who I can talk to, and we can have a dialogue. I can't talk to thin air, or I can't talk to nothing, because I run out of things to talk about, and I either end up rambling, which happens a lot, or I get bored, I stop talking, and then because there's no one to interact with, I just end up not shutting down, but I close off my mind, and then I would rather than just fire off some music and paint in silence for the next like 5 or 6 hours, which is honestly my preferred way of painting. When I hobby, if I'm looking to be productive, I prefer to hobby alone and with no distraction. And so I think if I were to do Twitch in the future, it would have to be something more focused, maybe a Q&A or an AMA. And I may experiment in the future with streaming to YouTube instead. The other issue becomes I also want to, or with my new process, I want to record everything I'm painting. And because I have a very specific way of talking and describing what I'm doing or teaching what I'm doing when I'm recording, with Twitch or YouTube, you almost want to always be talking in more of a conversational way. I don't want to have to record audio on top and have to redub or relink everything, because then this becomes an extra process or an extra step that I don't want to do. One of the biggest struggles or challenges for me, and it still is in terms of this YouTube content and content creation, is balancing quality and the amount of time I end up spending in post production or editing versus actually teaching and focusing on the content. And quite honestly, for the most part, I've been focusing or choosing to prioritize content over the quality of the video. And so while I've been using Premiere or using these videos to learn Premiere and how to better edit and do stuff in post production, a lot of my focus has been on just simple editing, cutting the content together so that it's teachable, and as long as the 4K is recording the painting well, as long as the quality that's good, I don't really care about how I look on the camera, and I don't care about the fancy edits or the crazy overlays, because those take time, and I'd rather spend that time on painting more models and putting out more content. So I think as I learn my process and as I learn these tools and become more comfortable and familiar with everything, I may explore more in post editing and doing more with that stuff. But for now, I'm trying to keep it simple and another ramble. But yeah, so basically, I don't think I'm going to continue streaming on Twitch as an end result, at least until it becomes, or I have a bigger following where I'm doing more Q and A's, or I can get more people to jump on and we can do AMAs and have a conversation. Yeah, I honestly would rather just paint and record for my YouTube videos rather than stream on Twitch and talk to nothing for 5 6 hours. Oh, this is getting longer than I expected it to. I'm rambling a lot, so I'm just gonna skip. So my goals for the next month are, they're going to be fairly simple again. Um, there's going to be a bigger volume because there's a few projects I want to knock out by the end of the month. So I have a pile of rocks that I've built, and I think I can nail them out in a day or two. I need to find a day where the weather's good and I can just slam out the airbrush outside and just prime everything, airbrush everything, and then weather it. It shouldn't take more than a day or two, so I can knock that out, get a huge portion of my terrain painted, and then I'm going to switch gears to a couple of Marvel Crisis Protocol models I've picked up, which I also want to record. So I picked up the Hulk because after 2.5, 3 months of painting nothing but Necrons and Junk Force, which is a lot of inorganic shapes, a lot of robots, I wanted something with pretty much all skin tone to paint, and he seems like a lot of fun. He's a nice scale, and I figure if I'm going to jump into the game, why not start with him? I ended up leaning into the Spider People. I picked up Miles Morales and Spider Gwen. I converted Miles to have his more urban street outfit from Into the Spider Verse, and I'm looking forward to painting and recording those as well. I definitely also want to paint my Junk Force. I have the two gun haulers that are pretty much built and ready to go. I ended up spending some time this weekend detailing, doing some of the tires that go on the sides to act as little bumpers. I had to model two of the hooks that go on the back of the winches, and then just polishing up and adding just the last few details for the crew and for the ship decks. So I want to get them painted. I want the whole army done by the end of the month, and then that way I can put them aside and focus purely on the Deathwatch, try and get them finished up before Soulblight comes out. I'm probably not going to pick up Curse City. I was humming and hawing about it, but I think the pre-order goes up next week, and it's too soon for me to pick up the box. And from what I hear, it's a partial release anyways, so there's honestly no rush. I'd rather just shift focus, work on some terrain, work on my Marvel stuff, and then we'll see come June, July, August if I still want to pick up that box, and even if it's still available, or hopefully they'll release more of that army. In terms of the videos I have planned, I've almost finished editing the Sarek videos. There's 8 of them, and I was undecided in terms of how I wanted to release them. I felt like one video a month would have been too long, simply because a couple of the videos, like the introduction, the retrospective, and the basing, are kind of, in my mind, nothing videos. They don't really teach you much or show you much about the painting process of the model. And also, while it would have given me a huge buffer in terms of content, it would mean that I would be painting stuff now that I wouldn't be releasing videos for probably until June, because I've also recorded the Deathwatch Chaplain. So I ended up settling for releasing all of the videos over the course of this month. I'm going to do 3-2-2, so I'll get all 8 videos out over the course of 3 weeks. And then because this is a 5-week month, if I can get both gun haulers done by the end of the month, I think I'll do a hobby focus on my Junk Force. And if not, I'll probably have a video done for Hulk. So I'll be releasing that instead. If not, Hulk will be released in May. Yep, so that's pretty much it for me. I hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a like and subscribe for more awesome weekly content. And don't forget to check out my Instagram at SirJohnTheHo for daily updates on my hobby projects. Until next time, happy hobbying.